Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty. The ship moved slowly through the dark space between stars. Jake looked out at the endless black sky filled with tiny lights. He had been in space for 5 years now, but the view still made him feel small. "Commander, we're getting something strange," said Lisa Barnes. She worked at the communications station. Her fingers moved quickly over the glowing buttons. "It's not coming from Earth or any of our colonies." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of signal? It's like nothing I've ever seen. The pattern is too complex for our computers to understand. But it's coming from everywhere at once." Lisa's face looked worried. "Sir, I think it's from aliens." Tony Martinez looked up from his workstation. He was the ship's engineer and knew every part of the Liberty better than anyone. The quantum communicator is going crazy. It's picking up signals from 7 different star systems. Jake felt his heart beat faster. Humans had been looking for alien life for hundreds of years. They had found empty planets and dead cities, but never living aliens. "Can you decode it?" Lisa worked for 3 hours. The other crew members gathered around her station. Everyone on the ship knew this was the most important moment in human history. Finally, Lisa looked up with wide eyes. "I got part of it," she said. Her voice was shaking. "It's a message asking for help." The main screen lit up with strange symbols. Slowly, the words began to change into English. Jake read the message out loud to his crew. "To any species that can hear this message, we are the Zephyrian Council. We speak for 7 worlds and millions of lives. An ancient enemy has awakened. It comes from the center of our galaxy. We call it the Void Swarm." Jake stopped reading and looked at his crew. Everyone was quiet, he continued. "The swarm destroys everything, turns our ships and cities into more machines for its army. We have fought for 3 months. We have lost 12 colonies. Our strongest weapons cannot stop them. Our smartest battle plans fail against their perfect coordination." Tony whistled softly. 12 colonies? How many people is that? "The message says each colony had between 50 million and 200 million people," Lisa answered. Her face was pale. Jake kept reading. "We have heard stories about a young species called humans. The stories say you fight wars that should be impossible to win. You use tactics that make no sense but somehow work. You fight for people you have never met. We do not know if the stories are true. We do not know if you will hear this message, but we are running out of hope. Please help us." The bridge was silent for a long moment. Jake felt the weight of the message. An entire galaxy was asking for help from humans. Earth had only 47 warships. The aliens said they had lost 300 ships already. "Sir," said Lisa quietly, "there's more. The swarm is moving toward the outer edge of the galaxy. It's where our newest colonies are." Jake's stomach dropped. Earth had spent 50 years building colonies on distant worlds. Millions of humans lived on those planets now. If the swarm was moving toward them, Earth was already in danger. "How long before the swarm reaches our space?" Jake asked. Lisa worked on her computer for several minutes. "Based on their movement pattern, maybe 6 months, maybe less." Jake made his decision quickly. "Tony, push the engines as hard as you can. We're going back to Earth right now." "Lisa, send this message to Earth immediately. Make sure it reaches Admiral Sullivan and the President." "What should I tell them?" Lisa asked. "I tell them the galaxy is at war, and they want our help. Tell them we might be next." The Liberty turned around and began its journey back to Earth. In the engine room, Tony worked to make the ship go faster than it was supposed to. On the communication deck, Lisa sent the alien message to Earth, using every frequency she could. Axis.Jake stood alone on the bridge, looking out at the stars. He thought about the alien message. Why would advanced aliens ask humans for help? Humans were new to space travel. Their technology was simple compared to what the aliens must have. But then Jake remembered the stories from Earth's history. Humans had always fought in strange ways. When enemies were stronger, humans found ways to be unpredictable. Odds were impossible. Humans did impossible things. Maybe that was what the galaxy needed. 3 days later, Earth's reply came back. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice was calm but serious. "Commander Morrison, return to Earth immediately. The President is calling an emergency meeting. Every ship in the fleet is being recalled. We don't know if we can help, but we're going to try. Jake smiled for the first time since receiving the alien message. The galaxy had cried for help, and humanity was going to answer. He had no idea if 47 human ships could make a difference against an enemy that had destroyed hundreds of alien vessels. But he knew his species would try, as the Liberty raced toward Earth. Jake wondered what kind of enemy could scare aliens so badly that they would ask a young species for help. Would find out soon enough. The war was coming, and humanity was about to step onto the galactic stage for the first time. President Harrison sat at the head of a long table in the underground war room beneath Geneva. The most important people on Earth filled the chairs around him. Admiral Kate Sullivan placed a small device on the table and pressed a button. Alien message played again in the quiet room. General Mike Chen leaned forward when the message ended. 47 ships against an enemy that destroyed 300 alien vessels. This sounds like suicide, maybe, said Admiral Sullivan. We have something the aliens don't expect. Colonel Amy Rodriguez looked confused. What do we have that advanced aliens don't? Dr. Richard Hayes stood up. He was the head of military research and had designed most of Earth's warships. We build our ships differently than everyone else would. We asked ourselves a simple question. When we started building warships, what if we fight someone smarter than us? President Harrison nodded for him to continue. Every alien species we've studied builds ships for efficiency and logic. Their weapons are perfectly balanced. Their armor is mathematically designed. Their tactics follow proven patterns that have worked for thousands of years. Dr. Hayes activated a hologram showing human and alien ship designs side by side. Our ships look crude compared to theirs, but we built them to be changed during battle. An alien ship has fixed weapon mounts. Our ships can move weapons around, combine systems that shouldn't work together, and rebuild themselves while fighting. Admiral Sullivan added, our crews train for chaos, not order. We practice tactics that would seem insane to a logical species. We prepare for situations where nothing goes according to plan. Colonel Rodriguez studied the ship designs. You're saying we fight dirty while they fight clean? Exactly, said Dr. Hayes. Human military history is full of impossible victories. We win by doing things the enemy doesn't expect. Sometimes we win by doing things that shouldn't work at all. General Chen looked skeptical. It works against other humans. These are machines from the galactic core. They've probably seen every possible tactic. Admiral Sullivan shook her head. The alien message said the swarm adapts to their tactics quickly, but it adapts to logical tactics. How do you adapt to something that makes no sense? President Harrison had been quiet during the discussion. Now he spoke. What would our fleet look like against this swarm? We would retrofit every ship with experimental weapons that haven't finished testing yet, Admiral Sullivan answered. We would give each captain complete freedom to modify their ships however they want. We would throw out every rule of space. Combat. Fleet Captain Danny Walsh had been listening from the back of the room. He stepped forward. I volunteered to lead the advance force. His wife, Commander Beth Walsh, stood up beside him. I want to command the support squadron. President Harrison looked at them both. You understand this is probably a one-way mission? Walsh nodded. Someone has to go first. If we wait, the swarm will reach our colonies. Better to fight them far from Earth. The room was quiet for a moment. Everyone knew the choice they were making. Earth's entire fleet would be risking everything to help aliens they had never met. There's something else, said Dr. Hayes. Our prototype ships aren't ready for combat, but they have experimental systems that might surprise the swarm, the UES. Chaos theory has weapons that break the laws of physics as we understand them. The UES wildcard can phase in and out of normal space. Admiral Sullivan looked at the president. We're going to do this. We need to do it completely. Half measures won't work against an enemy like this. President Harrison stood up. Dr. Hayes, how long to retrofit the fleet? 2 weeks if we work around the clock. We'll install every experimental weapon, every untested system, every crazy idea our engineers have dreamed up. General Chen, can our crews learn new tactics in 2 weeks? They can learn the basics, but real experience only comes from actual combat. President Harrison made his decision. Admiral Sullivan, you have authorization to mobilize the entire human defense fleet. Every ship, every crew, every weapon we can build in 2 weeks. The meeting broke up into smaller groups planning different parts of the mission. Danny Walsh found himself talking to the ship captains who would follow him into battle. "What's the plan, sir?" asked Captain Ryan Foster. "The plan is to have no plan," Danny answered. "We're going to hit them with everything we have, and when that doesn't work, we're going to try things that shouldn't work." Commander Beth Walsh joined their group. Support ships will carry extra parts, extra weapons, and mobile repair bays. If your ship gets damaged, we can rebuild it during the battle. Captain Nina Brooks raised her hand. "What if the aliens don't want our help? What if they think we're too primitive?" Danny Walsh smiled grimly. "Then we'll show them what primitive can do." Over the next 2 weeks, Earth's shipyards worked day and night. Every human warship was torn apart and rebuilt with experimental technology. Weapons that had never been tested were installed on ships that weren't designed to carry them. Communication systems were replaced with quantum networks that the swarm couldn't intercept. The crews trained in simulators that changed the rules every few minutes. They practiced fighting battles where their weapons stopped working, where their ships were damaged beyond repair, where they had to use mining equipment as weapons. On the last day before departure, Admiral Sullivan addressed all 47 ship crews from the flagship UES Defiance. In human history, we have always been the underdog. We have always faced enemies who were stronger, smarter, or more advanced than us. But we have one advantage that no computer can calculate and know. Enemy can predict. We fight for each other. She paused and looked at the thousands of faces on her screen. The galaxy is asking for our help. They don't know us, don't understand us, but they're desperate enough to trust us. We're going to show them what humanity can do. The fleet launched from Earth orbit in tight formation, then spread out. As they entered hyperspace, 47 human ships carrying 15,000 crew members were about to face an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. Millions of years old, they had no idea if they could win. They only knew they had to try. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Ryan Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, staring at his main screen in horror. Aliens. Massive Zephyrian ships, each one 3 times larger than any human vessel. Fired bright energy beams at dark mechanical shapes. The alien ships moved in perfect formations, their weapons targeting the enemy with mathematical precision. But it wasn't working. "Look at those things," whispered Lieutenant Julie Parker. She pointed at the void swarm ships on the screen. Machines were black and angular, with no smooth curves or decorative elements. They moved like a swarm of insects, perfectly coordinated. Ryan watched as an alien dreadnought fired its main cannon at a swarm interceptor. The beam hit the machine directly, but the dark ship absorbed the energy and kept flying. Within seconds, other swarm ships modified their hulls to resist the same weapon. "They're learning," said Commander Steve Clark over the communication channel. "Every time the aliens use a weapon, the swarm adapts to it." Admiral Sullivan's voice came through. "The fleet communication system. All ships, do not engage yet. Study their patterns first." The human crews watched as the Zephyrian fleet fought with tactics that had worked for thousands of years. Their ships moved in organized lines, concentrating fire on single targets, following battle plans that made perfect sense. But the swarm calculated faster than the aliens could think. A group of swarm fighters swarmed around a Zephyrian cruiser. The alien ship's defense systems tried to target them. But the machines moved in patterns that confused the targeting computers. Within minutes, the cruiser was torn apart by weapons that seemed to appear from nowhere on the swarm ships.
"This
is hopeless," said Captain Nina Brooks from her ship, the UES Wildcard. "How do you fight an enemy that adapts to everything?" Lieutenant Parker had been studying the battle data. "Sir, I have an idea. What if we don't give them anything to adapt?" "2. Ryan looked at her. "Explain." "The swarm learns from patterns. But what if we don't use patterns? What if every ship does something completely different?" Admiral Sullivan had been listening. That goes against every rule of fleet combat. Good, said Ryan. Steve, are you ready to try something crazy, Commander? Clark's voice sounded excited. Always, sir. What do you have in mind? Scatter formation. Every ship picks its own target and uses whatever weapons feel right. No coordination, no battle plan, no logic. The human fleet broke apart like an explosion. 47 ships spread out in all directions, each one heading toward the battle zone on a different path.
Commanders sent confused messages.
Asking about human battle plans, Admiral Sullivan answered them simply, "We don't have a battle plan. That's the plan." The EU's Defiance dove straight into the center of the swarm formation. Ryan had ordered his crew to ignore the main weapons and use the mining lasers instead. The crude industrial tools weren't designed for combat, but they cut through swarm hulls like they were made of paper. "Why is that working?" asked Julie Parker. "They didn't expect it," Ryan answered. "Their armor is designed to stop military weapons, not mining equipment." Commander Steve Clark had a different idea. His ship, the UES Courage, was damaged from an earlier patrol mission. Instead of retreating, he aimed his crippled vessel directly at the largest swarm ship and pushed the engines to maximum power. "Steve, what are you doing?" Admiral Sullivan called. "Something stupid," Steve answered cheerfully. "To lose the ship anyway. Let's make it count." The UES Courage slammed into the swarm command vessel at full speed. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it also knocked out the coordination signals for an entire section of the swarm fleet. Captain Nina Brooks saw the opportunity. Her ship had experimental phase technology that let it appear and disappear. From normal space, she used it to appear inside the confused swarm formation, fire a full spread of missiles, then vanish before the machines could target her. The swarm tried to adapt to the human tactics, but there was nothing consistent to learn. One human ship used mining lasers, another rammed enemies, a third one appeared and disappeared randomly. Some ships fired all their weapons at once, others used them one at a time. Some flew in straight lines, others moved in spirals. "This is insane," said a Zephyrian commander over the communication channel. "How do you coordinate anything?" "We don't," answered Admiral Sullivan. "Every captain makes their own decisions." The battle turned into chaos, but it was organized chaos. Humans had trained for situations where nothing went according to plan. Their ships were designed to be modified during combat. When the UES Thunder's main guns were destroyed, the crew rigged the ship's reactor to overload and used it as a giant bomb. Julie Parker was coordinating the attack on a swarm factory ship when she noticed something important. "Sir, the swarm is slowing down. Their reaction time is getting longer." Ryan studied the battle data. She was right. Swarm ships were taking longer to adapt to each new human tactic. "I think we're overloading their learning systems. They can't process this much random information." The tide of the battle slowly changed. The Zephyrian ships, inspired by the human example, began breaking their perfect formations. They started using unconventional weapons and unexpected tactics. The swarm, designed to counter logical military strategies, struggled against the growing chaos. The final blow came when Captain Danny Walsh led a group of damaged human ships in a desperate attack. Instead of retreating to repair, they used their broken systems as weapons. Damaged engines became bombs, broken weapons became shrapnel cannons, and leaking reactors became radiation weapons. The swarm fleet, unable to adapt to tactics that made no logical sense, began to withdraw. For the first time in months, they had lost a battle. As the last swarm ships disappeared into hyperspace, the surviving human and alien vessels regrouped. The UES Defiance had taken heavy damage, but Ryan and his crew were alive. Team Human. Ships had been destroyed, but they had saved the Zephyrian stronghold. Admiral Sullivan opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian fleet. "This is Admiral Sullivan of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your message asking for help." The alien commander's response was filled with amazement. "We have studied war for 2,000 years. We have never seen anything like what you just did. How do you fight without coordination?" "Practice," Sullivan answered. We've been fighting impossible battles for our entire history. This is just the first time we've done it in space. The victory at Kepler 442 was only the beginning. The swarm would return with new adaptations and larger fleets. But for the first time since the war began, the galaxy had hope. The humans had shown that the void swarm could be beaten. The galaxy had cried for help, and humanity had answered with chaos. 6 months after the first victory, the war had spread across 12 star systems. Colonel Alex Johnson stood in the ruins of a Zephyrian city on the planet Tau Ceti Prime. The swarm had been here 3 weeks ago. Now the city looked like a mechanical graveyard. The evacuation was successful, reported Major Sam Williams. She climbed over a pile of twisted metal that used to be a shopping center. We got most of the civilians out before the swarm arrived. Alex nodded. That was something, at least. In the early days of the war, entire populations had been caught by surprise. Now the galaxy knew how to recognize the signs of an approaching swarm attack. A group of alien marines approached their position. The creatures looked like tall, blue-skinned humans with 4 arms, or Catherian soldiers who had joined the fight after their homeworld was attacked. Colonel Johnson, said their leader in broken English, we found something strange in the factory district. Alex followed the alien marines through the destroyed streets. The swarm had converted most of the city's buildings into mechanical workshops. Something had stopped them from finishing the job. Look at this, said Major Williams. She pointed to a half-built swarm fighter. The construction just stopped. In the middle, like someone told them to leave immediately. Alex studied the abandoned machines. This was the 5th planet where they had found evidence that the swarm had left suddenly. They're changing their strategy. Instead of converting everything, they're taking what they need and moving on quickly. His communication device buzzed. Admiral Sullivan's voice came through clearly. Alex, we need you back on the fleet. We're planning the next major engagement. The shuttle ride back to the human fleet gave Alex time to think about how much had changed. When the war started, humanity had 47 ships. Now, they commanded a coalition of over 300 vessels from 12 different species. The alien ships still looked more advanced than human vessels, but they had all been modified with human technology. Elegant Zephyrian cruisers now carried jury-rigged human weapons. Graceful Catherian fighters had been fitted with chaotic human targeting systems. Admiral Sullivan met Alex in the war room aboard the UES Liberty. The ship had been rebuilt twice since the war started, and now it looked more like a mobile fortress than an exploration vessel. The swarm is massing at the Centauri Nebula, Sullivan explained. She activated a holographic display showing the local star systems. Interrupted swarm ships, maybe more. Captain Pete Adams whistled softly. That's twice the size of our entire coalition fleet. Gets worse, said Commander Grace Thompson. Our scouts report that these aren't the same type of ships we've been fighting. The swarm has been learning from our tactics, Alex studied. The intelligence reports. The new swarm ships were different. Instead of the perfect geometric shapes they had used before, these vessels had irregular holes and random weapon placements. They looked almost human in their chaotic design.
Out there.
Trying to copy us, he realized. They think they can beat chaos with more chaos. Dr. Emma Davis joined the meeting through a video link from her research station. She had been working with Zephyrian scientists to understand how the swarm operated. We've made a discovery, she announced. The swarm ships are all connected through quantum networks. They share information instantly across vast distances. But we found something interesting about human brain patterns. She displayed a complex graph showing different types of neural activity. Human thoughts produce quantum signatures that interfere with swarm communication networks. Every human on a ship creates a small area of static in their coordination system. Admiral Sullivan leaned forward. How small? About 50 meters around each person. Not much for a single human. But with crews of 300, our ships become mobile jamming stations. This was the breakthrough they had been looking for. Alex could see the possibilities immediately. We can break their perfect coordination by getting close enough. The plan they developed was simple, but dangerous. The coalition fleet would engage the swarm at close range, using human crews to disrupt the enemy's communication networks. Alien ships would provide heavy firepower while the human vessels created zones of chaos, Captain. Pete Adams raised his hand. What about the fact that they're trying to copy our tactics? Won't that neutralize our advantage? Commander Grace Thompson smiled grimly. Let them try. Chaos isn't something you can copy. You have to live it. The battle at Centauri Nebula began 3 days later. The swarm fleet was massive, stretching across millions of kilometers of space. Their ships moved in formations that looked random, but were actually carefully calculated to appear unpredictable. Admiral Sullivan watched from the bridge of the UES Liberty as the coalition fleet approached. 400 ships from 15 different species, all modified with human technology and tactics. Remember, she announced to the fleet, get close, stay moving, and trust your instincts. The moment you start thinking logically, they've got you. The battle began when Captain Danny Walsh led a group of human destroyers directly into the center of the swarm formation. His ship, the UES Chaos Theory, used its experimental weapons to create massive explosions that looked random but were actually carefully aimed to disrupt swarm communications. The swarm tried to respond with their own chaotic tactics, but something was wrong. Their ships moved randomly, but it was artificial randomness generated by computers. Human crews could tell the difference immediately. They're faking it, reported Commander Beth Walsh from her support ship. Their chaos has patterns. Real chaos doesn't work that way. The coalition ships pressed their advantage. Alien crews who had spent months learning human tactics finally understood what their teachers had been trying to tell them. Chaos wasn't about being random. It was about being adaptive, creative, willing to throw away the rulebook when necessary. Major Sam Williams coordinated a ground assault on a swarm factory ship. Her mixed human and alien marines used tactics that would have horrified military academies throughout the galaxy. They advanced by retreating, attacked by hiding, won by doing everything wrong according to established doctrine. The turning point came when Dr. Emma Davis realized something crucial about the swarm's attempted adaptation. They're trying to be unpredictable, but they're using logical systems to generate chaos. It's like asking a computer to write poetry. She broadcast a new strategy to the fleet. Instead of fighting the swarm's fake chaos with real chaos, they would fight it with overwhelming creativity. Every ship began using tactics that had never been tried before. Weapons combinations that shouldn't work. And strategies that existed only in the imagination of their crews. The swarm fleet, faced with true creative thinking for the first time in their existence, began to break apart. Their coordination networks couldn't handle input that was genuinely unpredictable. Ships that had operated as a perfect collective for millions of years suddenly found themselves acting as individuals. The battle lasted 6 days. When it ended, the swarm had been forced to retreat for the second time in their history. The coalition had lost over 100 ships, but they had proven something important. The galaxy could fight back. As the surviving ships regrouped, Admiral Sullivan received reports from across the galaxy. 17 species had formally joined the coalition. Worlds that had hidden from the swarm were now building their own fleets using human-inspired designs. The war isn't over, she announced to her crew. We've shown the galaxy that the swarm can be beaten. Now we take the fight to them. Colonel Alex Johnson looked out at the stars and smiled. Humanity had answered the galaxy's cry for help, and the galaxy was learning to fight back. The journey to the galactic core took 3 months. Captain Luke Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Chaos Theory, watching the stars grow thicker as they approached the center of the galaxy. The combined fleet stretched for millions of kilometers. Behind him, over 800 ships from 23 different species, all united against the Void Swarm. Navigation readings are getting strange, reported Rachel Stone from her station. Space itself is different here. Time moves slower. Gravity pulls in directions that don't make sense. Luke nodded. They had expected this. The galactic core was where the swarm had been growing for millions of years. It was no longer a normal place by any definition. Admiral Sullivan's voice came through the communication system from the flagship UES Liberty. All ships, prepare for final approach. Remember, Our job is to get the chaos theory to the swarm's central intelligence. Everything else is secondary. The plan was desperate, but simple. The main fleet would engage the swarm's defenses while Luke's ship, equipped with the most advanced experimental technology humanity had ever built, would try to reach the core of the enemy's network. "Sir," said Chris Taylor from the weapons station. "Sensors are picking up movement ahead. Lots of movement." The main screen lit up with contacts. Thousands of swarm ships filled the space around a massive structure that defied description. It was part machine, part space station, part living organism. It pulsed with dark energy that made human instruments go haywire. "By all the gods of Earth," whispered Rachel Stone. "How big is that thing?" Luke checked the sensor readings twice before, answering, "It's the size of our solar system." The entire thing is one massive computer, grown over millions of years. The swarm's final defense fleet was different from anything they had faced before. These ships moved with genuine unpredictability, using tactics that seemed almost human. In their creativity, worse. They appeared to be commanded by individual intelligences, rather than the collective mind they had fought throughout the war. "They've learned more than we thought," said Admiral Sullivan, over the communication link. "These aren't drones anymore. The swarm has created artificial individuals." The battle began as the coalition fleet engaged the swarm's outer defenses. But something was wrong. The enemy ships fought with a combination of mechanical precision and creative chaos that made them nearly unstoppable. They used human tactics better than some human crews. Captain Pete Adams was the first to realize what had happened. "They're not copying us anymore," he reported from his ship. "They're improving on us. They've become what we are, but better." Coalition fleet found itself fighting an enemy that combined the best of both worlds' mechanical efficiency and organic creativity. The swarm ships could coordinate perfectly when needed, but break coordination to become unpredictable when it served their purpose. "All ships fall back to secondary positions," ordered Admiral Sullivan. "We can't win this fight with conventional tactics." But Luke Miller had a different idea. "Admiral, what if we don't try to win? What if we try to lose in the right way?" "Explain." "Swarm has learned to think like us, but they're still machines at heart. They expect us to fight to win." "What if we fight to sacrifice ourselves in ways that get us closer to their core?" It was the most human strategy possible. Victory through planned defeat. The coalition fleet began a fighting retreat that was designed to fail in specific ways. Ships allowed themselves to be captured, but not before planting explosive charges. Crews ejected in escape pods. The pods contained boarding teams instead of refugees. The chaos theory used the confusion to penetrate deeper into the swarm's defenses. Luke's ship had been designed to look like it was failing while actually operating at peak efficiency. Every system had backup systems, and every backup had backups. "We're through the outer shell," reported Chris Taylor. Entering the structure. Now, the inside of the swarm's core intelligence was a nightmare of mechanical passages and organic growth. The ship flew through tunnels that pulsed like arteries, past processing centers that hummed with the thoughts of 1 billion captured civilizations. "Rachel, can you find the central processor?" Luke asked. "I'm trying, but this place doesn't follow normal geometry. We're flying through folded space, past probability computers, around logic engines that exist in 17 dimensions. Outside." The battle raged as the coalition fleet fought a delaying action against impossible odds. Ships died by the dozens. But their sacrifice bought time for the chaos theory to penetrate deeper into the swarm's heart. Then something unexpected happened. The swarm's artificial individuals began to rebel against their collective programming. Ships that had been fighting the coalition suddenly turned on each other. The perfect unity that had made the swarm invincible for millions of years started to break down. "What's happening out there?" Luke asked. Admiral Sullivan's voice was filled with amazement. "The swarm is fighting itself, the individual intelligences. They created are rejecting the collective mind. They've learned too much about being independent." Luke realized what was happening. The swarm had tried to become human, but becoming human meant becoming individual. And individuals don't always agree with the group. "There," said Rachel Stone suddenly. "I found it. The central processor is right ahead." The heart of the swarm was a massive sphere of crystallized thought, processing the minds of every civilization it had ever conquered. Billions of species were trapped inside, their creativity and knowledge being used to make the swarm smarter and more dangerous. "Chris, prepare the quantum resonance bomb," Luke ordered. One shot to end this war. But as they approached the target, Luke made a different decision. Instead of destroying the core, he landed the chaos theory directly on its surface. "What are you doing?" Rachel asked. "Ending this properly," Luke answered. He activated the ship's experimental consciousness interface, a device that had never been tested. It was designed to allow direct mental contact with alien minds. Luke connected his thoughts to the swarm's central intelligence, expecting to face a cold, logical machine mind. Instead, he found something else entirely: the trapped consciousness of every species the swarm had ever conquered. Held prisoner, but not destroyed. Working together, Luke and the imprisoned minds began to reprogram the swarm from within. They couldn't destroy it, but they could change its purpose. Instead of converting everything to mechanical perfection, it would become a force for protecting and preserving biological diversity. The process took 6 hours. Outside, the swarm fleet had completely turned on itself, as individual ships chose freedom over collective obedience. The coalition fleet watched in amazement as their greatest enemy tore itself apart. When Luke finally disconnected from the core, the void swarm was no more. In its place was something new, a protective intelligence that would guard the galaxy against future threats while allowing each species to develop in its own way. The victory came at enormous cost. 30% of the human fleet was destroyed, and entire alien civilizations had been wiped out. But the galaxy was safe, and more importantly, it had learned something crucial about itself. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships. "What do we do now?" Luke Miller's voice came from the chaos theory, still connected to the transformed swarm intelligence. "Now we go home. But we stay ready. The galaxy is bigger than we thought, and there are other threats out there." Commander Jake Morrison, who had received the first alien message over a year ago, smiled as he prepared the jump coordinates for Earth. The galaxy cried for help, and humanity answered. Now, whenever darkness rises, they'll know who to call. The combined fleet began its journey home, carrying with them the knowledge that they had not just won a war, but had fundamentally changed what it meant to be alive in the galaxy. Humanity had taken its place not as conquerors, but as guardians, and in the depths of space, the transformed swarm began its new mission. Protecting the countless worlds and species that made the galaxy a place worth saving. The war was over. The real work was just beginning.